And so I whip out my notebook and I write down the way she looked and the way she stood and the way she spoke, because I know that's what my character, looked like or sounded like.
Okay. Karen, hello. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I am pumped to talk about your book, and I have it here for those who are watching the video, Justice for Emerson. I love this book, and I cannot wait to dig into it. So,
thank you.
Let's start with the pitch.
Yeah. So, could the murder of a 77-year-old Vietnam vet, beloved volunteer, be somehow tied to a murder in 1968? So this is a dual timeline murder mystery, present day, and Aria comes to work. She runs a not-for-profit. She's 50 years old. She's 5'2". She has a real issue about her height. She comes to work and she finds a beloved volunteer, 77-year-old Cal Emerson, murdered in the basement. The murderer sees her, and she sees the murderer. And we are off and running. The book won 2025 Best Mystery of the Year by bestthrillers.com. And that's my pitch.
Thank you. Congratulations on that award. I saw that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And well deserved, because this was just so well done in so many ways. So let's get into that. Let's start with just where the idea came from. How did you form this?
So all of my books, this is my 5th book, and all of my stories start with characters. So characters talk to me, and then I figure out how their story is going to evolve. I'm not a plotter. I write, I think and solve as I go. When I was about 3/4 of the way through Justice for Emerson, my husband, who's helping me with the research because of all the Vietnam stuff, so he's a Vietnam vet, so he was helping me with the all of the things that were going on in Vietnam. That's the dual timeline part. And he's 3/4 of the way reading it, because that's where I was in the writing. And he says, "Karen, this is so good. I can't figure out who the murderer is." I said, "I know. I can't either. I keep waiting. I want the murderer to reveal himself." He said, "You don't know who did it?" I said, "I don't." So I start with characters, and I wanted, the experience, the whole Vietnam experience. And I read The Women by Hannah Kristen. She wrote about the women in Vietnam.
Okay.
And so I wanted to do something that honored the Black Vietnam vets who have faced a lot of extra. And then I also, Aria just, said this was really her story. So I had to do a dual timeline.
So when you wrote this, I guess you wrote it then in order, because you didn't outline it. You would have written Emerson's story and then just switched the next chapter to Aria's story back and forth. Wow.
Because I don't outline. It's. I had a book that I'm writing now. I actually had a character yell at me and say, "No, I am not a middle class on my way to college person, because this never would have happened if that was the case. I am poor, Karen. I am poor." And I thought, "Oh, she's right." I had to go back and change it. So yes, I follow. I'm always thinking of the plot. As I'm writing, I'm thinking about what's going to happen next, what could happen next, what if this happened next. But I don't, outline all the way. Do you outline? Are you an outliner?
I'm in between. So I have a good idea where the story's going. I have the book blurb. I have an idea of the book cover, because I like to do that as like an inspiration. But I don't do chapter by chapter, because the stories never follow. I've tried it, and the stories never follow that path.
I love that you think of your book cover first. That's so cool.
It's fun. It brings it all to life for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're building these characters, like you said, they talk to you. Are you taking notes as they talk to you so you can keep track of them and their story?
I do. When I was writing my first book, I actually would have to like pull over in my car and pull over the side of the road and like, oh my goodness, or I'm sitting on an airplane and I see somebody and I realize that that person looks just like, one of the characters. And so I whip out my notebook and I always have paper with me no matter where I am. And so I whip out my notebook and I write down the way she looked and the way she stood and the way she spoke, because I know that's what my character, looked like or sounded like.
Okay.
So yes, always, pieces come to me, and I try to keep track. I keep notes about what I said somebody looked like. But they're so alive that I rarely get mixed up. I rarely forget that this one had a certain color eyes, and now she, I can't remember what color her eyes were, because, they're living, breathing people.
So do you find you go through life in the world through a writer's lens, where you're constantly looking at people and situations and asking those what if questions all the time?
Isn't that terrible? Yes. I mean, every time somebody tells me anything, they're telling me something that happened to them in their life, and I'm thinking, oh, like I could use that. Maybe not in the book I'm writing now, but I don't want to forget that. And sometimes I struggle with humor, because you need a little, especially when you're writing really intense, suspense, page-turning stuff. You need those light moments. So when somebody tells me something that really strikes me as amusing, and I think that would work, but sometimes I don't know where it'll work, and so I just have to keep it in my notebook until some time comes around. So yes, beware, don't talk to me, because I will
Watch out.
Watch out.
When you crafted this story, Justice for Emerson, do you ask yourself if you're writing a darker, deeper story, or is that just the way you like to tell your stories?
No, thank you for asking that. That's so important to me. So all of my stories have behind them social issues that matter to me. I don't want the book to be about that in the sense of, I want you to learn about this. But I weave them in. I weave in moments when somebody will realize what it means to be unhoused, what it means to be a 13-year-old girl that doesn't have access to, sanitation, products, what it means to. So this one has addiction in it. It has, parents who are not together. It has stepfather. Is that a real father? Poverty. I try to lift every book I have. I try to lift social issues that I think are important and weave them through, a suspenseful page turning.
How do you decide what weaving is versus talking too much about it? Because I think you did an excellent job of weaving it in, because I noticed them all. I'm reading to notice as well, but I noticed it all, and it was all just very well done. It was just enough to give me an insight, but not overdone, so as to pull me from the story.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, and I have to correct myself sometimes when I've gone too far. I realize it when I'm reading, when I'm rereading. I love to rewrite. Matter of fact, you can't be a successful author if you're not up for rewriting. Those beta readers will slam you and tell you what you need to fix. So I really look. So when I'm doing my rewrites, when I'm constantly asking myself, did I play that too heavy? Is that okay? Is it the right balance? But the characters help with that, because Aria, who is 50 years old, she's the mother of a college-age student, a freshman in college, and she's a widow at 50. And she cares deeply about the unhoused. She cares deeply about people who are hungry and marginalized. So as long as I keep her true to her character, while her story is going, it's easier to get the right balance because it's her life.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
I appreciated her also, that little romance love story with Jax in the middle of the book. Because she's older, but it was so nice that she's feeling those feelings and finding that love for herself again. And she's obviously doubtful and been through a lot and am I too old and stuff. But yeah, it was great.
You know, somebody bought my book and a link on LinkedIn. He's a contact on LinkedIn. And so he sends me a note on LinkedIn. He says, Karen, I'm just boarding a plane. I'm on my way to Atlanta. But I'm just telling you, if you kill Jax, I'm never speaking to you again. And then the next day he says, okay, I'm leaving Atlanta. And Jax is cool. He's good. Okay, but what you did to Wally. Poor Wally. And he's giving me this commentary. All the way through. So yeah, I like Jax a lot. I wanted her to, I hoped that she would find her way to him. You know, yeah. I mean, he's just a good guy. And she had all these things that he was to this and to that and to this and to that. Yeah. And, you know, it's not okay. But he's just a really nice guy.
Yeah. And speaking of that support for her, at the beginning of your book, you have a dedication to your husband. And I have always found it in all these conversations I've had with authors that there's a big support network behind successful authors. And I'm curious how he supported you through this journey. It's not necessarily just for this book, but the journey of becoming a writer as well.
You know, so we met when I was 13 and he was 14 years old. And we met at a party. I don't actually remember the party or meeting him, but he says that he met me at a party. And at 14 years old, he decided he was going to marry me. He told his 15-year-old brother, who said, what? What are you talking about? He said, no, that's her, that's the one. So he has been on my side. We've been married for 57 years. And he has been on my side for the whole time. And he's believed in me when I didn't believe in me. You know, when I would, like, is this any good? Or will I ever be able to get published? Or is there just, you know, another book in me? I don't think there's another book in me. He was always on my side. He would give me honest feedback. You know, he would tell me if he thought something was off, but he has read all of my books at least 5 or 6 times because he's one of my beta readers. So he's been a wonderful support and never lets me get discouraged.
Oh, that's amazing.
For long.
Yeah. Yeah. We always have that voice in our head.
Yes.
So let's go to research a little bit. When we were, you had mentioned some of the historical facts that you like to put in there. You had Vietnam. What kind of research went into all the book? So
first of all, I lived through Vietnam with Bob. So I knew it from my wifely, you know, perspective. I mean, he and his mom and dad would sit and watch the TV and watch the names scrolling to see if his plane went down and if his name was, I mean, it was a terrible time when that's one of the ways you found out people were dead, you know, on the news. So I had, you know, feelings about the time, but I had to ask him so many questions. And I asked his brother too, because his brother had been in Vietnam. They weren't allowed to be there at the same time, so his brother was there first, and then his brother came home, and Bob went next. But then he just, not like he's an old guy. He doesn't remember everything. So I had to go and check and see. Like, I asked him questions like, you know, I said, in Kristen Hanna's book, The Women, the dust, she said, was orange. do you remember the dust being orange? Like in Tuiwa, was it orange? He goes, Karen, I don't remember that. I said, okay, I'm gonna go and research and see what color the sand was or the dust was at Tuiwa, Vietnam in 1968. And it turned out it wasn't orange. So it was a combination of asking questions, remembering things, researching things, and I thought I didn't like research, Mark. But until I wrote True Grace, which is my historical novel, I always avoided anything that I had to research. So my first 3 books were all contemporary, so I could just draw on my own experiences and stuff. But then I found out research is so fun. You find out like the coolest things. Yeah. So that was the other thing. After writing True Grace, which is set in 1924, I wanted this book to have some historical part of it, since I enjoyed writing for the first time historical fiction.
Were there moments in this book that your husband had mentioned things that he wanted you to put in because they were more authentic to the experience that he had?
You know, it's interesting. He never, only True Grace did he ever, because he knew my grandmother and it was inspired by my grandmother, did he say, well, how come you're not putting this in? Or how come you're not putting that in? But with Justice for Emerson, he was just, you know, he just made sure he read it and said, yeah, that makes sense. I remember that. That's how it felt. You know, for example, addiction, people came out heavily addicted. Many people, not everybody, and not Bob. But lots of people came out heavily addicted. And he said to me, you know, it cost $1.25 to buy a whole bottle of scotch. They made it, the services, the armed services, made it so easy for these men to purchase and drink alcohol that alcoholism, you know, when you're in a war, you're scared, you know, and it's dirt cheap to, you know, to grab a bottle. So I'm very, very grateful that Bob came back sober and, you know, okay, that he didn't get caught up. But I did want Emerson to experience and overcome, if he could. It was touch and go there for a while. Right?
Yeah.
You weren't sure that Emerson was going to make it.
No. How hard was that for you to write? Emerson probably impacted me emotionally the most for the roller coaster that he went through from losing his friend. Well, sorry, I won't try not to give spoilers. Spoiler alert. From what happened in the book to him to like the addiction and the back and forth and everything that he lost. And I just felt so bad for him. How do you write that? Like, you must feel terrible as you're writing it.
Yeah. You know, what I tried to do is not judge. So I want to make sure that my readers see people as whole human beings, and they're not judging. Mm-hmm. And I do have somebody in my life who went through, 2 people who went through that journey, that addiction journey.
Okay.
And I love them both so much, and watched their struggle and watched losing ground. And then when they weren't, you know, Emerson's age, and it wasn't Emerson's story, but I saw that path. And I wanted to make sure that my readers didn't judge Emerson. That they, you know, or if they did, but not because I wrote it in a way that I was judging. Here is the story. And so many of the reviews say that they so respected how I handled that without
Absolutely.
it being,
Yeah, it was touching because it was. I was really rooting for him, and I don't give spoilers, but
even though we know he's dead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
right.
We know the end result.
The book opens with Emerson dead in the basement, and so many people said to me, you know, I just put that out of my mind. I was just rooting for him the whole time until we got toward the end, and like, oh, that's right. Emerson is dead, and
Yeah.
we're trying to solve this murder.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to get to a good place where everything was just great, and then he dies tragically, and I can handle that, but I don't want it to go the other way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I wanted him to get to that good place
Yeah.
where he was living a good life. And Arya really cared. Everybody at the way station really cared about him.
Yeah. When readers put down this book, what are you hoping they're going to feel, or what are you building toward at the end?
Yeah. So one of the things that I love that readers have said to me is that the plight of the unhoused, even though there was just moments in the book, not whole, heavy duty handling, that it got them thinking differently. Thinking differently about. And so Bob and I, with our church, we volunteer every week. We go out and we feed folks. We at the church, we pack up the food, hot food, and we bring sandwiches too for takeaway. And we drive to 7, 8 places where they're living and hiding in a town that's north of us. And so this is something that matters to me a lot. And I hope that when people put down the book, they'll look, because we walk past people sitting on the street, wrapped up in cardboard, and judge or ignore or don't even see, don't even notice. So that was one of the things I was hoping, that people would have a different thought about that. And then I also wanted them to be happy for Arya, There's a splat. For your listeners and viewers, there is a big splash of romance in this book. But that was my hope, that they would have empathy for people who struggle. Because so many of the unhoused also are struggling with addiction. They're not all, but that's one of the things that often comes together. And so I hope that people would care a little bit more, see a little bit more, think how they might help a little bit more.
Yeah. That's awesome. So the protest that was being staged and the food that they fed, was that like kind of almost like reliving that moment of your own life then, when they went out and gave sandwiches and went a little differently for them than you, I hope, but...
Yes, and it's interesting, because back in the Vietnam War, I was a pro-peace marcher, with the black armband and I was in I was in college, and so we were young and protesting the war that Bob was out fighting. He said, "You can't get arrested, Karen. Stop it." It's going to affect my future. So I did want to capture some of that, some of the activism.
Yeah.
That was happening.
It's so impressive how many things you packed into this book and managed to do it so well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Listeners, definitely pick up and read this book. It is so good. One of the interesting things you did was switching point of view, and I didn't think I had seen it very much until recently, where you also switched point of view, but tense. Or sorry, not tense. First person's third person.
First person.
Yeah.
Yes. So the first time, I always wrote in third person. My first 3 books, were, and then when I wrote True Grace, I decided to write it in first person. And so Grace is telling her story. When I did, and I've often done different points of view, switching back and forth. When I wrote this one, I thought, you know what? This is Emerson's story, but this is also Arya's story. So I wanted her to tell her story, but then the other points of view are not in first person. And I like trying new things and learning new things. And so one of the lovely, lovely reviews that Best Thriller did when they gave me they made the award for Best Mystery, was they said, I often find, the reviewer said, I often find multiple points of view annoying, and dual timelines never, one timeline doesn't live up to the other. But not so in this case. Karen Osborne pulled this off seamlessly. So that made me feel very, very good, because I was experimenting. I was trying something new, because it's fun.
It did work very well. I hadn't seen it very much until recently. There's been a few authors I've seen that I've gone from first person to third person in different chapters.
Yeah.
But yeah, you did pull it off very well. I have been confused in the past with what was happening, but the titles, the dates at the beginning, the chapter titles of characters when appropriate really helped with that too.
Yeah, like grounding the reader, where we are, whose point of view are we in, what year is it?
Yeah. Because sometimes it's not enough to just start with a sentence that you think makes perfect sense, but the reader is trying to understand. Like, wait, who's this? Yeah, who is this again? What am I doing here? Yeah. And where am I? Yeah.
Where am I?
What advice would you give to someone who just published their first or second book?
Wow. So, marketing is a bear. It's a bear. Writers, I know writers who love the marketing part of it. But to me, you have to make some real decisions about how much time you're going to spend marketing the 2 books that you already wrote, or the 1 book that you already wrote, and how much time are you going to spend writing the next book. And then, of course, there's the rest of your life. There's all the other things, in your life. And so I think really making some decisions about time and money. Because no matter who, I'm traditionally published with a small press. My cousin is self-published with a hybrid press. I have a good friend who's published with Simon & Schuster, so one of the big 5. Mm-hmm. All of us have the same problem, because unless you're a big fish, unless you're Connolly or Grisham or they don't spend a lot of time helping you promote. I have a friend who is published by a big house, but she's rich, and so she has a publicist, and so her publicist is just getting her on every podcast, every show, and getting her out there. So you really have to decide, about your budget, your time budget, your money budget. Talk to other writers, figure out what works for you, because what works for you might be different, for what works for them, and that was the biggest aha for me especially after the second book, because the first book I was still working, and so people would invite me to come speak and teach, and I'd say, "Oh, may I bring my books with me?" And they'd say, "Oh, absolutely. And we'll set up a table for you." So they're paying me to speak, they're flying me to where I am, and I got to sell my books. Well, the second book, I wasn't working it full time anymore. And so now I had to make real decisions. Like, for example, I flew all the way to San Francisco from Florida to speak at a winery. Now, it was it was such a cool gig. They bought 30 books. They had a wine pairing with the book. Oh, this is the wine that goes with it.
Yeah.
But 30 books does not cover airfare, hotel, food, rental car.
No.
So you have to make decisions, even though it was really a cool gig.
How do you balance when you're writing versus when you're marketing? Do you go hard at writing for a while and then switch to marketing mode after you're done writing, almost periodical throughout the year, or are you always kind of trying to do both?
I'm always trying to do both. My son is a very gifted literary writer. He writes short stories, and he gets into really good magazines, probably 2-3 a year. And he's working full time, and he has a family. And he said, "Mom, just find at least 15 minutes a day when you can write. Maybe it'll end up being 3 hours. Maybe, but if you promise yourself 15 minutes a day. You'd be so surprised at how well, how you could keep going. I tried the novel writing November, NaNoWriMo, writing your novel,
Yeah.
and I was doing it with my grandson, and he said, "Granny, you are behind. Do the math. You won't make it." So I know so 15 minutes seems reasonable. Doing 1,600 words a day didn't. And so I had to find the right blend
Yeah.
for me. Yeah. And you do have to get the marketing in, don't you? I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know you know this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about what you say about 15 minutes is I have found the stress of sometimes sitting down at the keyboard and thinking I need to put out 2,000 words today can be a lot. The stress of sitting down and saying 15 minutes is not so bad. And sometimes I can spend 10, 15 minutes and almost get nothing. And then the words flow because I've taken the time to get into the world, into the moment, into the people. And then all of a sudden that 15 minutes can turn into 2 hours. But the first 15 minutes were not productive. It was the next hour and a half that were the most productive. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's right. It's less daunting. I'm going to do 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The other thing with the marketing is if the person can sprinkle in person, don't just rely on social media. Don't just rely on podcasts, as wonderful as they are. I have my own as well, and promote authors. But when you meet readers, it's like the best part of it. And it reminds you why you're writing, and it reminds you what a gift this is, gift to you it is, that you have the privilege that you've been published. So I find that if you just can find ways that in person, your local library, your local bookstore, go to a fair, a fair that's not even a book fair, because book fairs you're competing with, 50 other writers. You go to a market, a green market. What is it? Market. You know what I mean? The like a the fresh market or whatever it is.
Okay.
And you're going out to when people are out there selling their vegetables, and there are other kinds of vendors, and you're the only bookseller. That's great, because people will come up to you. They'll ask you about your books. And I'll say, "Are you a reader?" No, but my mother is. Which one do you think my mother would like? Well, tell me about your mom. It gives you really great connection meeting readers. It's a beautiful thing.
That's a great idea. I've never thought of going to a non-author event to promote, or non-book event to promote a book. I may have to give that a shot.
You should. I sell more books in non-author events than I do in author events.
Okay. And do you have a table with a banner and all your books laid out?
I have a tent. I have a beautiful tent. And then I, have all the books displayed, and I have my Square, on my phone, so I can do credit cards, and I have my all singles. I can do cash, and I have all my bookmarks. They would give away free bookmarks.
Yeah.
And then I make sure I'm standing and not sitting. I see a lot of people just sit behind their table and wait for somebody. I'm standing in front of my table. "Hey, Mark, how are you? Are you a reader? Can I show you something?"
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Okay.
It's all good.
Yeah.
And if you sell it, usually they only cost like $35 for a table, that they charge you to be there. So if you sell 2 books, you're at least on your way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you never know if you're going to have your next great fan. Come out of super fans, right?
That's the other thing that's so cool, is to have, I was at a local event, and at least 5 of the people that came by and bought another book were people who'd read one of my other books. And so they came over and said, "Oh, I just love this one, and I'm thinking about the new one, but I haven't read this one." And so that's cool too, to meet people. And I always take pictures. So, with the reader holding the books for social media. I can post it, and so people can see that, that somebody likes them.
Yeah. Yeah. Are all your books standalones?
Yes, I am writing my first sequel ever because I like trying new things. So it's tricky, right? Do you write sequels?
I did a trilogy. That was a lot of work.
Yes. Oh my goodness, I have to pick your brain later because trying to keep up with, with all of the things and all of the characteristics of the people before and keeping things true to who they were but bringing in new people, and it's been fun. I've been learning a lot, and I think I'm going to try it again. I think I'm going to do a sequel to Justice for Emerson. I think I'm going to do an Aria Jax story.
Okay. Another thriller.
Yes. How much trouble can two people keep
I was
getting
just
into,
thinking that. Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it. But I got to get this other one and this one. How much trouble can these two people get into? But here they are, once again, in trouble. So.
Where can people find your books?
So, first of all, they're sold every place you buy books, right? You can go to the library. If they're not on the shelf, just ask for them. You can go to Barnes & Noble. You can go to Amazon. You can go to your independent bookstore. Please do. Ask for them. If you don't see them, chances are you won't see them, and you should ask for them. And then you can come to my website. I'm www.KarenEosborne.com. And the E is like super important because there is a lovely, amazing writer whose name is Karen Osborne, and she got the name first, so I had to add she got published before I did, so I had to add my E. She writes mystical and dystopian, and I actually interviewed her. We met.
Oh, wow.
She saw that I was speaking, and it happened to be in a town that she lived in. This is in upstate New York. And this woman walks in, and she goes, "Hey, Karen E. I'm Karen Osborne." And she shook my hand. She brought her mother and her daughter. It was so fun. Because if you Google Karen Osborne, we both show up.
Okay, Karen E. Osborne. I'll link to that in the show notes. Make sure I don't get it wrong.
Thank you. KarenEosborne.com. All my books are there. Links to the places that you can buy them are there. Discussion questions are there. If you're doing a book club, there's a book trailer for Justice for Emerson you can watch. And then all of my podcasts are there.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. I've loved learning more about this book. I'm excited for the next book that you're writing, and I have 4 other books to go back to because I will have to read more of your books. This one was just so good. I have to read the other ones you've written. Thank you for sending that copy. It's a real pleasure to read.
Thank you so much.
If you don't mind sticking around for a few extra minutes, we're going to get into our rapid fire question for our Patreon members. Thank you.